It's such a pleasure to welcome you here in the room and to welcome everybody in the online audiences. My name is Branka, and I am a founder and executive director of AI for Peace organization working at the intersection of emerging technologies, peace building, humanitarian action, and the development. And we are a proud co-organizer and partner for the 2026 edition of the Data for Peace conference. I'm also an author, I'm an activist, I'm a fellow, advisor, but most of all, I am a peace builder. I became a peace builder because I learned what happens when peace failed. And I learned that not from reports or from newspapers. I learned that from my personal experience, lived experience. So I was born in the Balkans, and I grew up through different wars and crises in the 90s. And I now live in Mexico, where we face different sort of violence, but the one that really has the same consequences. And this really made me care and work deeply around peace. And I think many of us, probably all of us, are today in the room or behind the screens because we truly care about peace. And I think we have a lot of work to do if we care about peace. And I think it's really appropriate to start the Data for Peace conference with lots of data. So let's see what the state of peace is in 2026 and what actually the data is telling us. The number of conflicts is at its highest point since the end of the Second World War. And I'm starting here with proudly partnering with Uppsala University with actually a paper that they recently published, and I invite everybody to look into the results of this paper from Uppsala Conflict Data Program, which is telling us that in 2025, the number of interstate conflicts doubled for the second year in a row, and this is the highest figure since UCDP started collecting the data since 1946. The number of state-based conflicts also increased. It's also the highest number. UCDP registered a total of, again, the biggest number of one-sided violence in 2025. Actually, this is an increase of more than 400%. On top of all of that, the world experienced the highest number in fatalities, both combatants and civilians recorded since the Rwandan genocide. Now, we were lucky with the timing of this conference that another big report in the field was just published last week, the Global Peace Index by the Institute for Economics and Peace, which is also bringing some really terrifying data and information around peace. The average level of peacefulness deteriorated for the 12th consecutive year. There are now 119 countries in the world that are less peaceful than they were in 2008. And conflict has been the major driver of all of this. Now, the geopolitical risks are worse than they were during the Cold War. And this is due to the military expenditure, which increased by 5.8% in 2025, the largest single increase since the inception of this index. Now, this is also happening because of other reasons, because of diminished role of multilateral institutions, because of, we are all aware of many trade restrictions, of increasing competition, not only between big powers, but middle powers as well. And a big message as well, with this increase of military and defense budgets, we are also experiencing this. Expenditure on peace building and peacekeeping was just 0.5% of total military spending in 2025. Now, I really think it's important to pause and understand that behind all of these numbers are people, families, real lives that are experiencing this crisis in a very personal and terrifying way. 117 million people were forcibly displaced globally in 2025, which is equivalent to 1 in every 67 people on Earth. Now, what hurts me the most as a kid who grew up through different conflicts and wars is that still nearly 1 in 5 kids globally are living or fleeing from conflict zones. 305 million people required urgent humanitarian assistance in 2025, and the year before, the global humanitarian overview met less than half of the required assistance. Now, all of these challenges, and many of them are not new. We've been facing these challenges for almost a decade now. And how we did it, with another partner to the conference, New York University Center on International Cooperation, we created a Data for Peacebuilding and Prevention program and Data for Peace to try to gather this community and to see what data and data-driven approaches can do to be partners in tackling all of these challenges. So this is a quick history. I see many familiar faces in the crowd. Many of them were there from the very beginning of the conference. And what we started doing in 2019 is mapping the ecosystem, trying to understand what is happening at this intersection of data and peace. And we realized that the ecosystem was actually quite bigger than what we realized, that it goes beyond academia. It's in the private sector, governments, civil society organizations, United Nations ecosystem, and that there is really a huge potential of connecting all of these actors, making sure that we don't repeat the same things and that we do the collaborations and partnerships. Now, there are many milestones in this program, but for this conference, I'm picking this one specific, the third report that you see in the picture, that we titled, "Can Emerging Technologies Lead a Revival to Early Warning, Early Action?" Now, just a little bit of a reminder what was happening at that time. The conclusions of this conference and the report published afterwards were that data collection was still in majority of organizations collected manually with field monitors, trusted experts, recording what is happening in their communities, and then enhancing this slowly with SMS, with phones. And then this was the moment of first utilization of some sort of automation, where we saw early use of satellite imagery, online news, social media analysis, and in combination with machine learning and the first utilization of natural language processing. However, the majority of this work was still concentrated in a very small group of people, people who had data science skills, organizations who had resources to actually invest in this field, and there was a need to sort of democratize this access and enable other organizations to do more work at the intersection of data-driven technologies and peace. There was this big conclusion as well that tech alone is not enough. Early warning, early action needed a combination of technology and data, but also field experts and those who have lived experience to make this work function. This will be a big question. Is this still the case, even with the latest developments in AI and emerging technologies? But this is the conversation we will be having throughout the next 3 days. Now, I thought it would be good to do a sort of a back to the future exercise here and see what was happening somewhere at the beginnings of this program in 2020 and what changed today in 2026 in this broader technology, emerging technologies ecosystem. Now, believe it or not, we were living in 2020 without ChatGPT, without Claude. In fact, the Anthropic as a company did not exist at all in 2020. And today, reading your applications, we see that already some of the projects in peace building are starting to embed these work streams in the peace building work as well. Are there any founders in the room? So imagine that the company Anthropic that did not exist in 2020 today is actually, I think, more than 900 billion in valuation and applying for IPO by the end of the year, potentially bringing a lot of philanthropic money to the field as well. So let's be motivated and see how some of this can actually go in data for peace. Now, foundational models in 2020 were not part of our vocabulary. Today, we have more than 1,000 languages covered by the language models, small and big. More and more satellites are orbiting our planet. Now, there are some things that directly impacting data for peace field, and this is that in 2020, majority of big AI players in the field were committing that they will not be developing their products for military and defense. Now, today, this is not the case anymore. These red lines are being crossed, and many of these organizations are switching to the national security or defense side. AI in warfare was largely theoretical in 2020. Today, across all of the conflict contexts we read on a daily basis, from Gaza, Ukraine, Iran, we see that AI-powered weapons are being deployed in the battlefield. Now, as Angelica mentioned, our donor, CRAFT, the Conflict Risk Analytics Fund, did not exist in 2020. Today, we are lucky to have such a fund that is actually supporting the development of the crisis data, and thanks to them, we are here today. Now, in terms of regulation as well, which I know so much of your work is happening at this intersection of governance and ethics, this is the time in 2020 where EU AI Act did not exist. So in a couple of years, we have one of the biggest regulations in the field that has this sort of a Brussels effect across different countries and regions in the world. At the UN system as well, this was a pre-common agenda time. So today, not only that we have a global digital compact signed, we actually have two major processes in the AI field, the global dialogue and scientific panel, one of them just launching the consultations across different sectors in Geneva in July this year. Now, just to go back and understand, this is only the period of 5 years, or 6. All of this happened in such a short period where we basically jumped from the field of emerging technologies. Today, the field is not talking about emerging technologies. It's a frontier now. All of these models, all of these AI developments are a frontier, so it's a big question for us. Where is our field in relation to that frontier? And we see with how many things happen in only 5 years, and this is a quote from UN Secretary General, that technology will never move in the future as slowly as today, which also sounds terrifying. How can we catch up with such a speed and such a development? And that speed also brings some additional challenges on top of all of the others that we have in the peace context. And just to mention some of them, the ChatGPT reached 100 million users in only 2 months. The EU AI Act and the Global Digital Compact as well, each took 3 years to adopt. GDPR, you remember the GDPR, it took even longer. 4 years to negotiate and 3 years to actually enter into the force. So technology moves in weeks and governance moves in years. Now, understanding also this mismatch in the amount of resources that we are having available, one frontier model training run today costs more than the entire annual budget of most UN peace missions. On top of that, we see that many of these technologies that are being developed are not really peaceful themselves as well. So it's really the question of what kind of tools we will build, but also how we will be part of the much bigger ecosystem that is being developed out there, and how we can bring our peace-building voices in the development of such tools, because there's so many of the research already done out there. Just to mention one paper that is pointing out that AI chatbots escalated conflicts by 250%, completely unprovoked, even advising for a nuclear attack is the first option, the best option, not as the last resort. So unprecedented challenges require unprecedented cooperation. And for us, this unprecedented cooperation is the Data for Peace community. It's you. And this is why we are happy to have you all in the room physically and all of our online audiences. This is why we organized this 2026 edition of Data for Peace, from early warning to early action, titled Bridging the Scientific Innovation with Policy and Practice. Now, this is not only another edition of Data for Peace. We unofficially titled this the Nordic edition. And we are really proud to do this here for the first time in Stockholm, in collaboration with our partners, Uppsala University. Angelica mentioned our donors. Thank you so much for the support. Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland and Folke Bernadotte Academy, really the leading organizations in the Data for Peace ecosystem. And then the broader ecosystem that is part of this Nordic edition, from PRIO, Martti Ahtisaari Peace Foundation, Views, SIDA, NORCAP, and many more, which are really giving us a model of how this development in the field should look like. Now the entire conference is much bigger than the Nordics, and this is a little bit of an overview of all of the applications that we received through our call for applications for this year edition of the program. And now the numbers are not that important here in the pie as much as the diversity of different sectors, which was my point here, because the Data for Peace for us was always a platform that is kind of unique in that sense. It's not keeping the discussion only in academia or only in private sector. We are really creating this safe space where all of the different sectors can come together, and although not always talking to each other, have an opportunity to actually discuss and plan some sort of a cooperation. Now, a very small thing for the field, but a big for us, is that in this edition of Call for Proposals, we received 2 times more applications than the last time. All of the practical applications of data in peace building, which I think is really giving us some sort of a positive signal in which direction this field can go. Now, we have more than 2,200 virtual registrations. I think this morning we actually hit 2,300. So we had to update this number several times. And it's really, again, a small victory for the field. And we are really happy to be able to bring online audiences to this conversation. On top of that, in only 2 months since we opened the Data for Peace LinkedIn group, which is our place to connect online as well, we gathered 1,600 members. And this is also an invitation for all of you here or in front of the screens. If you're still not members of the group, this is our platform of choice. Go and join. We will be posting there the conversations throughout the 3 days, and then keep this as a group, as a community where we can keep the discussions going after the conference as well. Now, just quickly, what we can broadly expect in terms of the conversations at the conference, both in person and online. We will, of course, be discussing where the field currently is, what are these challenges for the field, what actually works for the atrocity prevention, how we can use emerging frontier technologies, different AI-powered tools to advance the field of conflict early warning, early action. We will be discussing this big question of who actually owns conflict early warning, who owns the prevention, where is this relationship with local communities, with organizations who are on the ground, with citizens themselves. Are we measuring the right signals to enable prevention and early action? How do we do the data collection in still very insecure settings? We will be discussing not only conflict and conflict prevention, but also peace. What works in peace and peace building? How do we track peace processes? How do we develop the community-based systems? And the workshop that we are really proud to host this year, that Angelica mentioned, that is piloting a paper by our colleagues from Folke Bernadotte Academy titled AI and the New Shape of Democratic Power and Peace Processes. Make sure to check the paper, go and download it, and really see what are all of the recommendations coming from this. Now, while reading all of the applications and all of your session proposals, I realized that there are certain trends and topics that are going through many of them. And with some of these topics, we mostly agree, and with some, we totally disagree where the field is. So just setting the scene for the next 3 days, what are the things that we will be discussing again that we agree on? That's still the number one problem for the field is this gap, the gap between the early warnings and early action. Now that forecasts are there only to complement, not yet, let's see if it's yet or at all, to replace the human expertise to ensure a good decision making. Trust, trust, trust is the topic that really cut through so many of the proposals, the one that cannot be replaced with any emerging technology. Following the do no harm principle, making sure that whatever we do in the predictive analytics do not unintentionally harm the populations that we are actually trying to help. And then things that we are still debating, and it was really fascinating seeing how many different attitudes there is around this. Do we actually have the right data? Do we have enough data? Early warning system, do they actually fail for the lack of data or for other reasons? Big data and AI do present opportunities for forecasting conflict, but the quality and relevance of the data is still a big, big challenge. Again, still debating. Are we for open data or for protective data systems? Because we see that in many of the cases of the projects that we are utilizing, the communities do get harmed at the end. No model is perfect. Are any of you developing the perfect model? Let's see the hands. Okay, we see. That's what I'm saying. We will be debating this. Maybe we do have a perfect model. Forecasting should be used as one input among many in strategic decision making, or this will be the best thing that we have in the field. Now, all of this and much, much more we will be discussing in the next 3 days, 2 in person and 1 virtual day. And we have 57 sessions on our agenda. We have 131 plus speakers. And those are all huge numbers. They really mean a lot for us as organizers and for the entire field. So my invitation for all of us at the end is really to use these numbers to make something bigger than us in this room, really to use them to turn data into action and action into peace. Once again, welcome to Data for Peace 2026. Thank you so much.